Hey there, and welcome. So let's talk about something you might not have thought much about, but it has these huge ripple effects in healthcare. I'm talking about the words we use. Specifically, why a major medical group, the American College of Physicians, is saying that calling a doctor a provider is, well, it's a really big deal, and not in a good way.
You know that famous line from Shakespeare, right? What's in a name? The whole idea that a rose would smell just as sweet no matter what you call it. It's a beautiful thought, and honestly, most of the time, we kind of just go along with it.
But what about a physician? Does that same idea hold true? If you call a physician a provider, is it still the same thing? Does that relationship, that core trust between a doctor and a patient, stay just as strong? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with why words are even a big deal here. Then we'll track how provider became so common. We'll get into the whole relationship versus transaction thing, see how this can mess with professional ethics, and finally, check out what the ACP recommends we do about it.
First up, a question of words. And look, this isn't some nitpicky grammar debate. We're talking about the American College of Physicians, one of the biggest, most respected medical groups out there, and they've actually put out an official paper on this, calling it a serious ethical concern. To really get why they're so worried, you got to go back in time a bit. Over 100 years ago, this legendary physician, Sir William Osler, he put it perfectly. He said medicine isn't a trade or a business. It's a calling. It's built on something totally different, a unique human connection.
So, the big fancy word for their concern is deprofessionalization. I know, it's a mouthful. But all it really means is that outside forces, and that includes the language we use, can chip away at a physician's ability to stick to their professional and ethical codes. You know, to always put the patient first.
All right, next up, the rise of provider. So how did this word get everywhere? Where did it even come from? Believe me, its backstory is pretty telling.
So check this out. The term provider didn't come from medicine itself. Nope. It actually first popped up in U.S. law back in 1965 in the Medicare and Medicaid legislation. And then, when the business of medicine really started booming in the 80s and 90s, the word just took off. It became this generic catch-all term for everybody. Doctors, nurses, hospitals, even insurance companies, all just lumped together.
And that brings us right to the heart of the whole argument, the massive difference between a relationship and a simple transaction. The words we pick really do show what we value, and if you look at the roots of some classic medical terms, it becomes crystal clear. Let's just start with the word patient. It comes from a Latin word, patiens, which means one who suffers. Just think about that. Right away, that word frames the whole encounter. This isn't a customer buying a widget, it's a vulnerable person who is hurting and needs help.
And then there's doctor. That comes from the Latin docere, meaning to teach. So the name itself tells you the job is so much more than just handing out pills. It's about being a teacher, a guide, someone who educates and counsels the person who is suffering.
And this one is amazing. Compassion. It literally means to suffer with. It's not just feeling bad for someone. It's this active idea of joining them in their struggle, of acting with them and for them. It's the glue of that whole relationship.
So you see the difference, right? It's just a night and day contrast. On one hand, you have physician, a calling, built on a relationship, a bond with a trusted confidant who has sworn these deep ethical oaths. And on the other hand, you have provider, a trade, a transaction, a supplier delivering a commercial service. These are two completely different worlds.
All right, so let's get into the real-world consequences, because this is where it gets serious. The ACP is basically saying this isn't just about feelings or semantics. This language shift is actively damaging the ethical bedrock of medicine.
Their paper lays out 4 key problems. Number 1, it totally blurs the lines of expertise. When everyone's a provider, you, the patient, have no idea who you're talking to. Is this a doctor with 15 years of training, a nurse, a physical therapist? Who knows? 2, it cheapens that sacred ethical duty a physician has to put your best interests above all else. 3, it chips away at the whole idea of medicine as a profession, something built on serving others, not just on making money. And 4, and this is a big one, the words we use can actually change how people see themselves and how they act. It can subtly nudge a physician to feel less like a healer and more like a cog in a machine.
And hey, it's not just the word provider. It's part of a whole family of business speak that's crept into healthcare. When you hear patients being called covered lives, or hospitals worrying about patient leakage to another system, that's the language of commerce, not compassion. It turns people into numbers and care into a commodity.
So, with all that on the table, what's the solution? Well, the American College of Physicians is actually pretty clear and straightforward about what they recommend. It's honestly this simple. Call physicians physicians. That's it. They're urging everyone to use language that's precise, that's respectful, and that actually recognizes the unique training, the specific role, and the ethical promises that come with that title.
And their advice is super practical. When you're talking about a physician, just say physician. If you're talking about a whole team of people with different expertise, you can use something like clinicians or healthcare professionals. That's way more accurate and respectful to everyone involved. The whole point is to use words that build up that mission of serving patients, not tear it down.
Which, brings us right back to the beginning. Because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about what patients actually want, and frankly, what they need. We don't want a transaction. We want a relationship. We want a trusted, compassionate physician who is there to heal when they can and to comfort, always. The words we use ought to protect that.
So, I'll leave you with a thought. The next time you find yourself in a clinic or hospital, just listen. Listen to the words being used around you, on the forms you sign, by the people you talk to. And think about the words you use. What will you be listening for now? What will you choose to say? Because as we've seen, words aren't just labels. They actually help shape our world.